and welcome to the Everyone Active podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jo.
Hi, I'm your other host, Michelle. How are you?
Really
We're
good.
giggling off camera because there's shenanigans going on behind the scenes.
As always. I mean,
how are you?
I like to create a little bit of happiness and giggling and laughter.
Yes. I think I just take it too far. That's the problem.
Never. Don't change. Please don't ever change.
Okay.
That's your deal.
You look very spring-like today.
Oh, yeah. We're in more daylight hours.
Did I tell you about my bulbs? I think we mentioned it a few episodes ago.
Go on.
No, I know the listeners will be wanting to hear this, Jo.
Of course.
They popped it on their calendars to say, ask Michelle about her bulbs. I'd like to report my bulbs are up and flourishing.
Great.
That's all I have to say on the matter.
Now, though, is Brody.
Brody did not eat them, but he did try and dig a few of them up. But yeah, now I've got daffodils, tulips. I'm a happy lady.
Yay. And we're in our little spring colours today. It's that time of the month, the amazing time of the month where we can go, we're welcoming guests to the podcast. Yay! So, team, we are talking about our sleep pillar. So we have got the lovely Oli and Steph back in to join us.
Hello.
Oh, great to be here.
Welcome back to the mayhem. Were you here when I was talking about bulbs?
Yes.
I'm sat here just hoping Brody is not a child.
Oh no. Oh yeah, sorry.
There's a bit of context there.
Well done. I should actually tell you that it could be a child.
Could be a child. They could dig. Eat
He is
bulbs.
named after Chief Brody from Jaws. There you go. Fun fact.
Love.
Yeah. So 2 dogs, Baxter, who's not an insane dog, and Brody, dogs. Yeah. Children don't care about that. We do, but I'm not allowed to
They don't dig up and eat the bulbs.
They don't dig up, not these days. I've trained them not to do that now.
Early teen years.
Well, they're adults now, but yeah, bless them. Got to love them. Lock him in the shed helps.
Hi,
Anyway,
lads.
moving on.
Gosh. Right.
Shall we?
Are we back in the room?
I'm back in the
We're
room.
not on-
Michelle has joined the chat.
We're not in Gardener's world,
Not in
wherever we
Gardeners.
were. We
Alan
are.
Titchmarsh has gone.
Guess, did I just tell you what we're talking about today?
I don't know if you did. I was too busy talking about bulbs.
We're talking about sleep.
I love sleep.
I really like sleep as well. Oh, I really like sleep. So, team, sleep is one of our 6 pillars in the Everyone Active U Plus membership.
Hooray.
And we have got lovely Steph and Oli in again to talk about sleep, why it's important, what we do, what happens in our body in sleep, why we maybe don't also sleep well. Choo, choo, doo, doo, doo.
We love it.
Oli, I'm going to come to you first. Why is sleep so important for human physiology? Actually, do we need sleep?
We absolutely do. I think, we can go quite a while without food. We can't go very long without air or water, but we sort of, between water and food is sleep. We expire as entities if we do not sleep for, I think the longest recorded time for someone didn't sleep is less than a week. I'll need to sense check that, but it is so fundamental to our physiology that one of those strong arguments made is if it wasn't this critical, we would have evolved out of it by now. Because I'm going to spend probably, if I have normal life expectancy and pretty average sleep, that's 26 years of my life I will spend asleep. Oh. Now that's a cost. It sounds great.
Yes.
Come on.
And all in one go. But principally, that is lost time.
Yes.
That is vulnerable time. If we go back to early man, that is time when I wasn't, mating, hunting, or protecting myself. So that is a lost opportunity. So it must be vital. And the number of biological processes that almost exclusively take place during sleep is increasingly understood. From a brain health point of view, your brain clears away lots of the debris that builds up over the course of the day. You've got an entire system called the glymphatic system that really operates only in sleeping hours when your body is shut down. Most of your immune system regulates during sleep, almost all of your memory consolidation during sleep. Most of your cell repair and all your growth takes place during sleep. So I think that there was somewhere along the way we started to see sleep as the enemy of consumer culture and a hassle, and it was just time to re-energize. And if it's just about re-energizing, then I can cut an hour here and stick an energy drink in there. If it's just about re-energizing, I can find energy through other means and mechanisms, and I won't pay the price for that. But what we now see is chronic sleep deprivation will be a contributor to almost every recognizable disease to mankind.
Wow.
But fundamentally will mean that your quality of life is markedly impaired as well. So it's something we're stuck with, unfortunately, forever. Or fortunately, if you love it. But lots of people don't.
So many people have issues with sleep, don't they, as well?
Massive. We got there was a big study by Philips who aggregated some data, over a couple of years ago now, and they found, which I think is conservative, that 61% of the UK had poor quality sleep, half of which was a clinical issue, so conditions that we might hear about like insomnia, where you can't fall asleep or stay asleep, or sleep apnea, where you have difficulty retaining oxygen through the night, and these little wake-ups, or restless leg syndrome, or night terrors. So lots of it was that, but most of it was what we call behaviourally induced sleep insufficiency, which is most people aren't sleeping enough or getting the quality of sleep because of the behaviours they're adhering to. So you've got probably 20 million people in the UK conservatively who do not sleep well.
Yeah.
Because of choices that they are making.
That's a lot of people, isn't it?
A lot of people.
What are our guidelines for sleep hours? How long should we be sleeping for?
So the World Health Organization, Steph, do you want to take this one? You love the World Health Organization.
I do love the World Health
She does. Steph's an ambassador of the World Health Organization. I'm going to go. I'll throw it up. Steph, how many hours should we be sleeping? I can't be hogging these questions.
I'm glad you asked. It's on average we're looking around 7 to 9 hours, and I think ultimately most people are operating slightly below that, around 6.5 hours. And you do get some people that absolutely thrive on 5 hours sleep, and they feel like, yeah, that's great, that's what I've always done. But ultimately, I think what the really poignant question is, and something that we come back to is, whilst you sleep, have you ever considered how that sleep feels or what's happening in that sleep? How do you feel when you wake up from that sleep? And that, I think, is the question where people then go, oh, yeah. Because I know a lot of people are like, I sleep for 12 hours. I'm like, that's amazing. Like, but I still wake up knackered. I'm like, nah, that's not so good.
Yeah.
What's going wrong there? People that power nap, people that, so many people, very, very interesting sleep behaviours. And it does become quite a good conversation point in terms of understanding just how much we need to be looking at what that turns into and how that kind of transfers in terms of the recovery of the body, the brain, all of the other day-to-day functions are so pivoted based on that quality of sleep that we do have.
And people are interested in this. So if I go and do a talk to a bank or an organisation, some people come to the movement talk, some people come to the nutrition talk, everybody comes to the sleep talk.
Really?
I think because if I do a sort of show of hands who would want to improve their sleep, it'll be 99 out of 100. Now that might not be the same number as who've got notably dysfunctional sleep, but improving that sleep, as Steph says, getting more value from the hours I'm prepared to commit into it, that feels like an absolutely logical thing. And we sit here and we've got fairly clear movement guidelines from the government. We've got a fairly clear food plate. There's debates on all of those things, but all we've got with sleep is 7 to 9 hours. It's like, well, hang on a minute. I could have 7 hours of great quality, or I could have 9 hours of junk.
Yeah.
So when the fact we haven't been educated on sleep architecture and sleep cycles, and the fact that good sleep starts almost from the minute we wake up, is a real misstep from an education point of view. And part of the Everyone Active U Plus is plugging a bit of that gap in terms of there are some very logical things that sleep needs and some very logical things that inhibit sleep. Let's start with those before we start defining ourselves as having a sleep condition.
And do you think, has our sleep kind of got worse, or do you think we're just more aware of it, of what our sleep patterns are?
That's a good question. I think lots of people who wear a monitor would say the awareness piece hasn't helped their sleep, because the minute you start overthinking about sleep, that in itself causes a problem. Sleep is the absence of overthinking and over technicality. So I think there's a lot of people whose sleep has been made worse by overthinking about it. But I do think the environment we live in now is the most aggressively anti-sleep environment that's ever existed. On the simplest basis of light pollution, in the fact that the key mechanisms through which I fall asleep tonight, one of the major parts of that is I hope that my eye will encounter less blue light and my brain will encounter red light or darkness. And I believe my core temperature will drop by 1 degree. Now, if I'm in a heated room with bright lights on, I've disabled 2 of the major mechanisms at which I'd normally fall asleep. And of course, we again, every time I come on this podcast, we talk about evolution. I'm not that into evolution, but but principally, there's been such a huge change, in the environment humans physically live in. So when you add noise pollution to that, light pollution, before you even get to stimulus, which is all the other things that my brain's being targeted with, it's a difficult time to go to sleep. Add to that stimulus, which is, hang on a minute, I don't leave work anymore, it comes home in my pocket. Hang on a minute. Or, there's been a plane crash in Africa that I would never have heard of 20 years ago. And now I'm finding out about it before some of the families have been notified. I'm getting
yes.
real-time feeds from X or other. So the horrors of the world are being piped into me, as is this perpetual connection. And if sleep is really this vulnerable time where I'm detached from all responsibility, that detachment has been inhibited far, far beyond the presence of constant light, constant noise, constant heat. So, there is it's an anti-sleep environment. So in the same way as we've spoken earlier on this podcast about an obesogenic environment, which is everything's trying to make me gain weight because it saves me energy and the food's got more calories in it.
Yeah.
And this falls into the anxiogenic environment that really my sleep is my biggest opportunity to restore energy, but also it's trauma therapy, it's creative brain, it's all that wonderful thing that goes on. It's not just the immune system, it's also creative thinking and strategic thinking and wound repair. And at the moment that is being assaulted on a 360-degree basis.
Left, right and centre. I'm going to refer them in again. Good old grandparents. Just like making this kind of like tangible in real life. Granddad didn't have a TV.
Yep.
Full stop.
Yep.
Dad had a TV that they were maybe able to watch on a Saturday.
Yes.
That was it.
Yeah.
And there was a channel, and I remember a channel that used to turn off at 10 o'clock at night.
That's spot on.
My generation had 4 channels.
Yeah.
And again, one of them turned off at 10 o'clock at night.
Yep.
That was it. And you knew that there was only news coming at maybe 2-3 times of the day.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
If I look at kids now, it's 24/7.
24/7, 100%.
Literally the whole time. News, stimulus, everything. And that is a granddad to a dad to me to a child.
It's a brilliant
that's
example,
4
Jo.
generations.
Yeah.
And that's just an example of why our sleep is now becoming maybe more recognised, but definitely effective. So Steph, from a nature point of view, do we have a sleep cycle in us? Like, is that what happens to our body?
Yeah, so obviously we talk about circadian rhythms, we talk about REM cycles. They're often things that we hear as kind of buzzwords, and a lot of the device and a lot of technology are very much tracking and trying to understand these. And I think technology, we talk about this, we're not necessarily saying everyone has to have devices, but it's been a phenomenal space that's really evolved in terms of technology that's been brought to the table to be able to track these and get the data from it. And I think what's been really interesting with these technologies is seeing how males and females and different ages relate through sleep patterns as well. And that is, making us even more powerful as we step into this space and continue to evolve the science around it in terms of what we do, and how those base behaviours underpin within different demographics as well as different genders. So when we look at that sort of information, it's kind of how do we layer that into it? But ultimately, if we're not doing the basics right, there's no point tracking it, because you're tracking something that's going to go,
Yep.
yeah, you're sleeping bad. It's like, yeah, I know I sleep bad. I wake up, I feel terrible.
Yes.
I don't need something else to tell me.
Yeah.
I wear different devices and have tested a few different things to track in these spaces. And, sometimes you're waking up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, better check it. It's like, it's counterproductive for me.
Yeah.
But then once you get used to it, they become very, very powerful tools to use, but only when used in the right space and context. So all of these devices are basically are testing and tracking those behaviours as you sleep. And as Oli mentioned, different stages of sleep allow different types of recovery. So those early hours of sleep are probably the most valuable and most important. But it's really difficult because so many people are so overstimulated before they go to sleep. And we've talked previously about recovery and how stresses are a massive part of it. And while you don't necessarily go to bed feeling stressed, that caffeine that you had at 5 o'clock is still in the system, or the agitation of something that you've seen that's quite being perhaps emotional on the news, that you're not, I'm devastated because this has happened, but you do sit back and go, that's crap. Like, that's not a nice thing.
Yeah.
They're all things that really struggle whilst we might fall asleep, allow our body to have relaxed to go into that deep sleep cycle. And if we don't hit that deep sleep cycle and the right hormones haven't been released at the right time, we're never going to get those physical recovery. We're never going to get those first stages. So you start to look at those kind of early hours that is crucial in terms of what we do. The second phase of sleep obviously then starts to move into different elements of recovery. But for most people, it's those first 2 to 3 hours that are the most pivotal, that are usually the most compromised. And what we need to look at, and all of what we're doing through U+, is looking at how we prepare better to move into those spaces so we are hitting the right recovery when we are asleep. So when we do wake up, we feel refreshed. Not, I've woken up, I still feel a bit jaded, I still feel like I'm not quite there. But that, for me, massively plays back into, you look at, anybody who does performance sport or is training at a high level, that physical recovery is needed. And if we're not getting that sleep correct, it's hugely compromised. So you start to look at elite athletes, that sleep focus has been a big moving point in their world over the past 10 years in terms of the research in that space as well. So I think it comes into all walks of life. Everybody relates into it differently, but that knowledge and the science within that, we're understanding it so much better.
It's growing. So Oli, Steph just spoke about like the predominant beginning of your sleep pattern is when that recovery is made. Can you make that up later in the week? Like, can you ever recover
Can you
from
bank it, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the dream. And the answer is no. So if I sort of work on the basis I need 7 hours a night, and I get 5 on 5 days of the week, can I sleep 12 on the 2 weekends and catch it back up? The answer to that is no, because the sleep doesn't work like that. You will create a bit of a sleep debt, and sleeping 1 hour extra at the weekend does have a meaningful impact on reducing cardiovascular disease risk and a few other things. So you can get it back a little bit. But what sleep loves more than anything else is consistency. Because, as Steph mentioned, their circadian rhythm, our 24-hour clock, is basically driven by a hormone we manufacture in the middle of the night that helps wake us up, and then is influenced by sunlight, and a hormone we manufacture as darkness comes and the body cools that helps regulate our sleep cycle.
Yep.
And those two hormones are working on light and dark, but they're also believing that there's some consistency when I wake up and some consistency when I go to sleep. So we call it social jet lag, when people are really moving around their waking and sleep times, because those hormones don't quite know when to release. And so I might wake up 2 hours later, but the hormone was produced way earlier than it should have been, or I go to bed an hour earlier and the hormone hasn't been produced yet.
Right.
And these hormones in play are cortisol is this morning hormone, melatonin is the evening. And, we know that we can't make rules for all different populations, shift workers or people who travel across time zones. There's nuance to this. But your general population wants some degree of consistency across 7 days of the week. If you are short of sleep in terms of volume over the working week, you can pay it back a little bit at the weekend, but you can't feast and famine with sleep. It relies on that consistency
It's there and
to be
then.
optimized, sadly.
It's sad, isn't
But I
it?
guess it's what we are as humans. We are dictated to by when the sun is in the sky, and then when the moon is in the sky. And you've both spoken about how there's now so many distractions.
Yeah.
I guess your body doesn't actually know the difference between blue light coming in from any other device bar the blue light from sunlight.
Exactly.
So is that why people aren't or one of the factors why people aren't sleeping necessarily as well is the body's not quite sure what's going on.
What's going on? Yeah.
Definitely. And on both sides. The obvious one is the blue light from devices. So blue light being sort of on that visible light spectrum. So that's coming off my LED devices from my from my phone screen to my TV to my iPad, whatever it might be. That has now been proven to suppress the production of melatonin, which is this hormone that helps transition me into quality deep sleep. But also melatonin has a crucial role in growing and cell repair and mopping up cancer cells. So blue light in the evening is confusing our physiology. It suppresses melatonin because it's like, well, it's still the day, Oli. So why are you getting ready to go to sleep? So that's a key challenge. The other challenge is people aren't getting adequate light in the morning. So we sort of make the assumption that it's all a blue light in the evening problem. It's also an absence of blue light in the morning problem. And that's relevant. Again, we're doing this in springtime, which is great. But, how do I convince my physiology that it's woken up? Because historically we'd wake up later.
Yes.
And go to, we'd have shorter operating hours in winter and then longer operating hours in summer. We would move with the seasons. Now I wake up at 7 a.m. regardless of whether, the sun is coming up in 3 hours time or it's been up for 2 hours. So we then have to sort of leverage modern day technology and say, well, how do I create a false version of sunlight earlier in the day? And there's devices that help with that. Or more importantly, how do I encourage people to go out and get natural sunlight when available in those early part of the waking hours? So when we look at optimizing the sleep cycle, when we think about these hormones, they both love consistent sleep and wake time within an hour. They both love light in the morning, darkness in the evening. And if you fix those 2 things or 3 things, you will solve a lot of people's challenge without them having to pop to a GP clinic and say, I need a medication to help me fall asleep. Because that cycle is so powerful. And we know it's powerful because those 2 hormones are the reason you both had jet lag before.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Awful.
Horrendous.
But it's all, so what you've got there is those hormones are out of kilter. So the hormone of sleep is high in the day. So that's why you're groggy and feel terrible. So melatonin's high during waking hours. Then after that day, you're like, oh, I'm going to fall asleep tonight. You go to bed and you can't fall asleep because now the hormone of the day is high at the nighttime. So cortisol's high. So to see how powerful those hormones are, we can just travel abroad for a long weekend in Las Vegas, and you'll feel how significant this
the
is.
week after.
Yeah,
But
we should do that as a team.
A huge point, though, isn't it?
Absolutely,
like our
yeah.
bodies don't switch on and off like a piece of technology.
No,
they
exactly.
can't. We're just not designed that way. Our insides don't work like that. Our hormone release doesn't work like that. People might like to operate by that, but there's a centre inside us that's going, no. And I just want to talk about this because I think it's absolutely fascinating. So when we were talking about the sleep cycles and NREM,
Yes.
so non-rapid eye movement,
Yes.
deep sleep, is that true that a new mother
Yeah.
won't be falling into that? Is that right?
It very likely. So when we look at sleep, it's beautifully named REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is sort of our dream state sleep, which will take place predominantly towards the waking hours. And then everything that isn't REM is brilliantly called non-REM. It's like there being one kid called Simon, everyone else is called not Simon.
Excellent.
I always feel a bit disappointed for non-REM, that it's defined by not being REM. But that encompasses different stages of sleep depending on how slow your brainwaves go. So non-REM stage 1 and 2 is sort of light sleep, so you're easily disturbed. But non-REM stages 3 and 4 is what is called deep sleep, where your brainwaves have gone super slow and you've dropped your cellular activity to the lowest level imaginable. So when Steph is absolutely right in terms of that non-REM deep sleep stages take place predominantly in the early part of the night, but only if you can allow your body to go to that state where it's not contactable. So have you ever been woken up where you're completely groggy and someone really struggles to wake you up? Have you ever had that or you've tried to wake someone up who's in a deep sleep?
Yes.
Yeah, and you're looking like that happens often.
My son.
Your son, right? So and it's like you can't wake them up.
He's like a dead person.
He's a dead person, right? So that wouldn't be particularly useful if he was guarding your village.
No, actually, we actually said that in my house. If there was someone breaking in, Cameron, no, it wouldn't be any good.
And that's because he's not on watch for someone breaking in.
No, he's not.
Right now, if he
Because
was,
he knows that you're there.
exactly,
And
right.
he's like, Mum's going to do it. I don't need to.
Mum will take that person down.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mess with Michelle.
No,
He's got
it's
the right
like
mindset.
he sleeps with total impunity that he is safe because you've created the infrastructure for him to feel like that. Now, when you look, so the example of a new mother's a great example, and new fathers will be screaming down the mic, "Me too." It's like, but maybe less so.
Lester, come on, let's start a discussion on this, Ollie.
Don't get
Come
mine.
on. Did you used to have arguments about how much sleep you'd had when you had a newborn baby? I used to say to Mr. Laurie, he'd go, "Oh, I'm really tired," and I'd go, "You're tired." And I'd say, "Show me how much," and we'd have to get our devices out and show each other how much sleep we'd had. And I'd be like, "See, I've had less."
Yeah.
It was like a competition.
No,
You can't moan.
Every household. Now he is tired. He just may not be
Is he
as
though?
tired as you.
There you go. Could you tell him that? Say it again for the people at the back. Mr.
I-
Laurie, he never listens.
That may or may not be true, but
Disclaimer.
disclaimer, Mr. Laurie. But I think that principle of if you wake someone from deep sleep, they're unwakeable,
Yeah.
and therefore it is evolutionary wise, it's very threatening. So you can only get there if you're not on watch, if someone else is keeping an eye, blah. So if you might need to wake up for something, if you're listening for a child crying, or your other half's out on the town, and you may need to ring you to get a pickup, you will disable deep sleep because you can't afford
Got
to
to
go
be
there.
alert to something.
And that state isn't always just about our obvious personal responsibility. If I watch the late night news and I'm seeing some horrors of the world that keep me sort of switched on or ruminating, and we see the rise of things that sort of are the counter to this, to-do lists and evening rituals, and we're trying to create a false impression that there's nothing I need to worry about. And some people there is something to worry about, and a newborn baby, you wouldn't want to be in a deep sleep because
of course,
that's a real risk to you and to the child. So we're a genius machine that's built for periods of time that would assume childbirth or a famine or a war, where we can go without getting this right for years. But if we do have the opportunity to go into deep sleep and we haven't built an infrastructure to allow it, then we won't get the biological benefit of it. And it's the rich stuff. Steph said it's the good stuff. It's the real memory. It's the real growth. It's the real immunity. It's the gut. So, not all sleep is equal. And our biggest killer of deep sleep and REM sleep, so that the sort of stuff between doesn't do much for us, is alcohol. And so when we get people wearing wearable devices of various clinical grade, when they consume alcohol, we see almost 0 to little deep sleep and distorted REM on much smaller amounts than they might anticipate. And for me, when we used to work in clinical practice and discuss alcohol, it's not a liver toxicity issue, it's a brain shrinkage issue, and it's a sleep issue. That's what alcohol's big problems are. but it helps you fall asleep. So when we're looking at volume, Steph's mentioned that somebody sleeps for 12 hours, wakes up knackered. We have to move. Volume's our first key thing. If you're not getting 7, can you get to 7? But I'd rather 7 hours of great than 9 hours of junk.
Yeah.
Yes.
And things like caffeine and that kind of thing as well has an effect as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Massive. And probably the greatest challenge is, if you have had that, you versus husband sleep off, you're both going to be probably drawn to the caffeine in the morning because it's a way of instantly uplifting energy.
Yeah.
So caffeine mimics adrenaline. It's a central nervous system stimulant. It gives energy, but it also acts in the brain to mask fatigue. So in a weird way, caffeine doesn't give us energy, it hides fatigue.
Yeah.
And it does that by landing in these receptors on the brain that no one's going to be that interested in. But it does that with a much longer shelf life than people anticipate. So if I have a coffee, and there's other caffeinated drinks, but assuming a reasonable cup of coffee, some of that will still be biologically active up to 12 hours later in my body. So anything after lunch is a risk. And that will suppress maybe me falling asleep, but almost certainly me going into those deep sleep cycles.
And the deep sleep's where we repair.
Interesting. You've given up caffeine recently, haven't you? And how have you found that?
I've had a lot of energy always, but I've absolutely loved it. I won't lie. My first 3-4 days, I did have headaches, and they were not particularly pleasant.
How many coffees were you having a day?
I'd already started to wean myself because I'm really affected by caffeine.
Okay.
I can't have a cup of tea because I won't fall asleep.
Yeah.
That was me. So coffee, I would only ever have a single shot, but I would probably be having 3 single shot coffees in a day.
Yeah.
And now I've just, it is not in my world anymore. I'm
feel better
loving
for
it. Yeah.
Have you noticed your sleep's changed as well?
I think I've always slept well because I am one of those people that wake up going, come on the world,
Yeah.
we're ready, let's go. But now my energy is, if it's actually even possible, actually higher, which is great. But I feel...
We'd like to take this opportunity to apologise to any of Joe's class participants early in the morning.
But I just feel, ironically, and this is the sentence, I feel more alert without caffeine.
Yeah.
Work that one out.
Interesting.
I know. But Steph, I think it was really interesting that you said right at the beginning that actually when we talk about sleep in Everyone Active U+, we are talking about habits, but it's how people feel when they're waking up. And it's that factor. And I suppose we recognise how we felt after we've done a leg workout or how we feel after we've done a chest workout. We've got that physical feeling. But when we're talking about sleep and we're talking about repair of our brain, it's not there, but our body's already giving us signs. If you're waking up and the first thing you need to do is have an energy drink, a cup of coffee, that's your body's signalling, saying, hold up, something's not quite right with your sleep. And on that note, I'm going to leave you all with another Ollieism. I'm going to take it from you, Ollie.
They're yours.
When you say now that it's like normalised when we're walking down our high streets first thing in the morning and everybody is holding potentially a caffeinated drink.
Yep.
Imagine if that was everybody walking down the high street holding a magic pill or a piece of alcohol. We've normalised a stimulant to try and get us alert and awake.
I could not agree more. And that's not to demonise or chastise. And coffee actually has loads of health benefits for us. But it is that idea, it's a feedback loop. If you are tired, it's a feedback loop that something you're doing is not energising you enough.
Yeah.
I suspect your sleep is also very good, Joe, through your physical activity, which is something we need to build fatigue to drive optimal sleep. So that's a key area that you'll win on. But, if we ignore the body's message of distress and treat that as a hassle, then we are unfortunately kicking a can down the road that we may not like. Where that ends up. So sleep is deprioritised at our peril, optimised through Everyone Active U+ with some pretty simple stuff that could hit millions and millions of people.
Absolutely. What a way.
What a way to end a podcast.
I know. I think that's the best ending of a podcast ever. Thanks. Thank you again, both of you, for joining us.
If any of those things sort of hit home with you, pop us an email at podcast@everyoneactive.com.
Or indeed, go and speak to your membership team
Absolutely.
and start signing up for your Everyone Active U+ membership. Team, as always, please leave us 5 stars, thumbs up, share the love, comments, and we will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.